Here is a quick audio test via YouTube. Good evening, everyone. People from Weibo and YouTube. Thank you for being here tonight to spend the next hour together meditating. Let's explore the mind together. It's never easy to find a moment, right, to sit together in a way that each of us looks within, understand a little more about the self, about the confusion, the chaos, the all kinds of challenges we are going through. In this session, let's meditate. Meditate. Not only doing breath meditation, but also look at the mind, look at life. Why do we need to look at it? I mean the mind, the life. To look at the mind means to look at the facts, look at the truth about the mind. Most people they choose to take refuge in different forms of beliefs, ideologies, thoughts, ideas. All kinds of escapes. Rarely do people look at the mind without any interpretation, without running away from it, without resorting to the knowledge, to the past experience. For most people, it seems to be comfortable to take refuge in something, as it appears. Is that really so? People really feel great in doing that? People have no issues, no challenges, no conflicts, no sufferings? It is natural when people present an image of being happy, an image of nothing happens. And it seems that most of us has got used to this kind of pretentiousness, right? We are living superficially all the time, attaching to some forms, etiquette. We are never honest with others because we really even never honest with ourselves. That's why we meditate. To understand all of this. All the troubles, all the chaos, all the challenges. This time, we choose, without a choice, to look at it without any interpretation. We just look at it as they are. Look at the pungenance, the pettiness. Look at the envious, anger, jealousy, ego. We just look at it. We don't say it's good or bad. Let's just look at it. The very way to look at it and see it clearly is meditation, no matter which forms you are doing. So before we start this exploration together, let's keep silent for 3 or 4 minutes. During this silence, you could simply focus on the breath, or you can just reflect how many moments of the day you were not present, non-judgmentally and peacefully. Today, let's talk about maturity. Mature. What is mature? Are we really mature or not? Everyone has a different childhood, and everyone has to grow up. The body is becoming mature biologically. But how about the mind? Is the mind also becoming mature? Probably we need to examine what is mature. It seems that some people is never mature, no matter how old they are. People grew up from being innocent, right? From a baby, very innocent, because the mind is blank. Then people are no longer innocent as they grow up. And unfortunately, most people are not mature enough, or not mature simply. Even though their body is. So most people's mind in a state of neither innocent nor mature. You may ask, what is maturity of the mind? Of course, biologically, the mind is becoming more and more functional, right? The recognition ability is growing as one grows up. But how can we say whether the mind is mature or not? Maybe we can start from here. The baby is innocent, the mind is blank. But as long as the baby is born into the culture, as it grows, the mind is no longer blank, is it? All kinds of influences from the environment, like the language, the culture. Nowadays, internet, all kinds of information, and people around them. The mind is never blank. The mind is beginning to accumulate all kinds of thoughts, conclusions, views. I think it's fair to call it pollution, is it? The way of growing up for most people is the way of being polluted mentally. What is the biggest pollution of the mind? What is the biggest pollution of the mind? I ask the second time. Isn't it the implantation of the self into the mind? The self, the ego, which destroy the innocence totally. Does it? Look at most people's life. When the self enters the mind, it never leaves them forever, for most people, right? The self makes people no longer innocent, but also make people far away from being mature. Look at this society, not here, all the world. Look at the chaos. Look at this kind of projection of the self, the ego in so many subtle forms. Look at yourself when you feel embarrassed, when you feel anxious, when you feel afraid, when the self is triggered and you are in the mood of self-defense. Look at all kinds of mental changes due to the self. Look at the self. The childish behavior because of self. And this childishness is different from being a child, a baby. This childness is never innocent. We can say it's silly, is it? The self. Look at the havoc wreaked by the self on life. People grow up, but still continue being childish due to the self, the chaos stirred by the self. What is mature? When the mind is mature, the mind is free from the self, the ego. When the mind is mature, the mind understands the self. The very way to understand the self give one a new dimension of life, which has nothing to do with the self. Psychologically, but still function as the self biologically. That's called maturity. Mature. Look at the human being doing all kinds of cunning things, all kinds of exhibitionism, all kinds of egoism. When the self is running through the society, or the society is built on the self, the ego, where's the space for maturity? That's why we meditate, right? Meditate. To meditate is to be mature, truly. To meditate is to understand life, understand the world. That's the maturity. To meditate is to train the mind to not to be caught in all kinds of details. To train for open mind, to embrace diversity. To peacefully understand the facts of life. Then act on these facts. For mature life. A mature life is an innocent life, is it? Sounds familiar, right? When we talk about a baby, the mind is blank, it is innocent. But a mature mind is also innocent, like a baby, is it? What's the difference between the two? The baby's mind is innocent, but it's very, very vulnerable, is it? It is vulnerable to all kinds of human pollutions, mentally, is it? But the mature mind is different. It is robust. When you see the facts, the very seeing the facts make your mind robust. Thanks to the robustness, the mind is resistant to pollution, is it? When you see the facts and the truth about the mind, there's a transformation of the mind, which is you can't imagine, but you can feel when it happens. To live a simple life requires a huge amount of energy to understand life. Then we could counteract all kinds of chaos to be simple. Or else, a simple life is a very naive life, which means very vulnerable. Look at this world, all kinds of influences. Look at your neurons. Neurons reacts to all kinds of things around you. If we could not understand the mind, we couldn't bring the harmony to the neurons. Then the neurons just working in a disordered way. Life is vulnerable. Vulnerable to all kinds of influences. But look at what most people are doing, right? They take refuge in thoughts and isolate themselves from each other and defend thoughts around the self, around the ego. Because the very defense points to the center of the thoughts, which is the ego, the self. That's what most are doing, right? They try to create all kinds of communities, which is divided by thoughts. Hopefully people can be attached to one community to make a mind, to keep the mind stable. But what is the facts? What is the truth? Actually, everyone is changing all the time. Everyone is switching all kinds of communities because this change from neurons, the chaos of neurons. People keep switching, right? But the life is still confusing. And that's why we meditate, right? Meditate to clear the confusion. You can only clear your confusion by your observance. I can't help you with that. Because we can only observe our own mind to understand all of this. That's the uniqueness of the meditation. Without seeking an authority to tell you what you should do, you observe the mind, understand the facts, see the truth, and you won't ask how to do. The very, very perception of what is has led you to the answer already. So now it's time to meditate, to calm down the mind, soften your nerves to perceive what is. Let's follow the audio guide and surrender yourself to this moment. Nothing really matters. Just feel it and do it. And after that, let's come back to the discussion. Now, let's take a 10-minute meditation. Start by taking a moment to find a comfortable position to sit in a posture that you feel relaxed and get alert. Let hands rest on your knees or laps. Let the eyes close gently. Soften your forehead. Act a soft smile in the corner of your lips. Breathe naturally. As you breathe in, be aware that you are breathing in. Feel the sensation of breathing in. The region can be the nostrils, can be the belly, can be anywhere. Focus on the part you feel most. As you breathe out, be aware that you are breathing out. Feel the sensation of breathing out. The region can be the nostrils, can be the belly, can be anywhere. Focus on the part you feel most. Fix your attention on the breath. Let go of any thought, words, images. This moment, nothing is more important than breath. while you are listening to the bell, check where your attention is. If it wasn't on the breath, after the bell, gently invite your attention back to the breath and sustain your attention on the breath. Slowly bring your awareness back to this room. Feel into your body. Wiggle your fingers and toes. When you are ready, open your eyes. I hope everybody has come down to some water in the last 10 minutes meditation. To watch the thoughts, not being into it. To watch the thoughts without being a watcher. This is the very way to meditate. Observe your mind, but there is no observer. If you observe the mind as an observer, this means that we see the mind through the self, the ego, which means that we demarcate the mind and the self, which should be part of the mind. And this observance is not observance at all, right? Because there's a fundamental division. The self separated from the mind. Then with this separation, what we see is an illusion, which is supported by this division. So the self itself is the fundamental division which leads to all kinds of conflicts. In other words, the self is the only source of all kinds of mental conflicts. Look at our mental troubles, mental challenges. Are they not the consequence of the self? Why the self is the linchpin? Why the self is the center of the issues? When we are holding to the self, we are holding on to this division. Let's look at the mind. The mind can't be divided. Simply can't. The mind is always running as a whole. Totality. But any way of dividing thoughts only creates issues, conflicts, deep level. Of course, all kinds of issues we have in this bigger world, the superficial ones are definitely the reflection of the deeper ones. To understand this havoc that division has wreaked on the human being, on the consciousness, is meditation. At least part of the meditation. To meditate is to figure out how to live a life totally. It's a very serious question, right? Can we live a life as a whole, totally, not being divided by some thoughts, not in a fragmented way, by all kinds of expertise, which is still the reflection of all kinds of thoughts? Look at the fragments of life formed from the knowledge, the expertise people have developed, and the phenomenon that people are identifying themselves with these thoughts, which in reverse re-enhance the self, the ego. It only creates these troubles when we couldn't live life totally. How for each of us to live a life totally? To understand what is the totality of the mind? What is the totality of the mind? We need to understand how the mind is divided. Right? The thoughts are the scissors dividing the mind into small pieces, even into splinters. When your foot is walking on these splinters, how do you feel? Isn't it painful? Stingy? Is it? Is that not the conflicts we are going through because these divisions? So to live a life totally means to live a life that is not dominated by thoughts. To live a life beyond the thoughts. Beyond thoughts means beyond the divisions created by thoughts. Then there's a possibility for us to live a life totally mature, a mature life, to have this true maturity. To understand this and act on these facts, insight is the life is the meditation. To be a whole being is an individual. It's a true individual, mentally independent, mentally orderly. This is very different from the individual we mean in our daily life, right? What we mean in the daily life about individuality is the egoism. It's a concept. It's a fragment of thoughts. Look at this individual. They are never complete. Look at their indulgence, dependence, all kinds of troubles because the self-ego. This is a conceptual individual. The society is based on this. The self, the ego, is a conceptual one. But when we talk about a complete person, a whole being, a true individuality, which is beyond thoughts, beyond any concepts, that's to meditate. So you see, across this world, if we don't turn inward to look at the mind, the heart, we are always surrounded by all kinds of influences, all kinds of misinformation. All kinds of confusions. There are so many authorities on the mind, right? And even those authorities are competing against each other to teach you how to do, what should you do. At the same time, each of us is confused about what is, because we are always trapped in what should be. Thanks to teaching of those authorities. To meditate is to negate those authorities totally, to look at the mind independently, to question it. To question all the conclusions we inherited from others, from the past generation, from the history, from the culture. The very way to question it is the beginning of meditation. So today, we covered two topics, basically. The first one is the maturity. What is maturity? How to be mature? Why most people are not mature? And second part, we look at the self again. How to live a life totally. What is a total life? A whole being. What's the relation between mature life and whole life? that's all for today's session. And thank you for everyone to give the attention to the mind, to your inner world. I really appreciate that there's still some people could turn inward to understand the nature of it, to resist to the influence of this chaotic world. Also, the chaotic world here. And that's it. That's all the things we have covered today. And today is Wednesday. There's still 4 days ahead for this week. And I hope everybody could enjoy a good week at each moment. Peaceful and joyful. And hopefully we can still continue meditating to feel the truth from the silence at the same time. And hopefully each one of us could do something to make this silence loud. And that's it. Take care, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. And hopefully we can see each other in the future sessions. Bye-bye.